Hello, and thank you so much for tuning into my channel. This is Damali. My channel is to help people develop skills, especially in when they are dealing with relationships and also regulating their emotions. And the reason why I'm doing this to the most part is that a lot of times, like I said in my previous videos, everyone is expected to know how to do the right thing, but they've never been told to the most part on how to get there. How do I develop the skills to be able to regulate my emotions? How do I engage my triggers when I feel overwhelmed or when I feel frozen and I'm in mode sometimes? Many times we are not given the tools, and so people write you off, or sometimes people just blame you for being a narcissist. And I think this is like a buzzword right now on the internet. Every time someone gets hurt, someone doesn't know what they are dealing with, they are classified as being narcissistic. And so I don't think sometimes people really pay attention to the damage that is caused when they label people to be certain things. But anyway, I don't want to digress. I'm here to talk to you about a skill that they call urge surfing. The skill is to help you to deal with a lot of emotional distress so that you can learn to tolerate it. Many times we all don't want to deal with uncomfortable emotions. Seriously, who wants to deal with that stuff? We just hope that everything is going smoothly, you get along with everyone, and you don't get overwhelmed. And if you do, it's easy to deal with it. But seriously, it's not realistic because we live in an uncertain world. And sometimes we go through the ups and downs in life as well as in our emotions. So many times, as a way of coping, we tend to pick up behavior. Sometimes people end up drinking, some people end up gambling, some people end up blowing up in emotional um, outrages. And some people tend to drink, and any other many behaviors people tend to pick up when they get upset. At least for me, I know when I get in a place of so much distress, I tend to withdraw. I kind of turn inward. But the technique is to help you, especially if you have severe unwanted behaviors that you don't know what else to do. Because when you're in that moment, it feels like there is nothing else you can do but to drink, to blow up, or to just gamble, whatever the behavior may be. And so the reason why it's called urge surfing is because you visualize like when an ocean is when the waves of the ocean are going back and forth, it rises up, it builds up, and then it peaks, and then it fades away. It builds up, it peaks, it fades away. And so if you can start to think about your emotions like a wave of an ocean, you may find a way to engage it so that you don't feel out of control. Because I think sometimes when we lose control, that's when we really, really freak out because we feel like we cannot sit in this moment. It feels like eternity. And so, one of the things that you first of all want to be mindful about is to know your vulnerable moments, is to know even the things that trigger you. A trigger is anything that causes you to react in such a way that you're coping with that threat. Anything that causes you to feel like you're threatened can be called a trigger. It could be an emotional trigger, it could be a physical trigger, it could be an environmental trigger, but you want to be able to understand the things that really trigger you so that you can recognize your urges. Because a lot of times we get triggered and we just react because we don't know that we are triggered and we just want to get out of it. But if you can understand what really triggers you, number one, so that you can recognize when you get triggered, what are you urged to do? Because that's when the urge is what takes you into the behavior. So you want to stop the behavior. If you're one that is screaming at kids, if you're one that is screaming at your spouse, if you're one that is screaming at your coworkers or your boss, you're the boss and you're just giving it to them. You want to be mindful when the urge is rising. Remember that ocean, it gradually builds up. It builds up, and when you're triggered, you start to feel in your body, your heartbeat starts beating faster, your blood is boiling. Sometimes you're feeling like you're clenching your fists because you feel like something has to get out of your system, right? So you're feeling that build up and it rises up. So at the peak, that's when you feel like, remember when the ocean is rising, the wave of the ocean is rising, that's when you feel like I can't do this anymore, I can't tolerate this anymore. That's when you lash out and at that peak, many times emotionally, that's when we find ourselves in trouble. So as you start to see that happening in your emotional well-being, start to recognize that as number one, because it's easy to want to get rid of the emotion without knowing how did it get there. So you get to know what triggers you, so you understand the urges as they come, and as they come. One of the other things I think, I don't know, I will talk about this more in one of my videos, the skill about being mindful. Being mindful is the ability to focus your mind on one thing at a time and focus on it without judging it and without criticizing it, but just observe it. So you're having a conversation with someone and they say something that triggers you, and you're gonna feel your blood boiling, and you're gonna feel your emotions are just getting right, they're building up to get somewhere. Be mindful without judging that I shouldn't feel this way. This is so wrong of me, blah, blah, blah. All those things that run in your head, you train your mind to learn how to focus on one thing at a time. So if you're having a conversation, just focus on the fact that she's just talking to me, right? So I'm going to listen to what she's saying without judging it, without opinionating it, without criticizing it. I'm just observing. Okay, as you're observing your emotions also, you're realizing what is it that she said or he said that really got you riled up. And as you get to know that, you start to understand that, you're going to accept that urge without having to act on it. Because once we judge that we shouldn't feel that way, that's when we really get into trouble, to the most part. And so when we judge the urge as it's bad, and especially some of us, when you're trying to live uh, a spiritually conscious lifestyle, you find that you're convicted, this thing is not supposed to be in my being, whatever. But you just want to be mindful and just be observant and see why the urge is there. And when the urge is coming, right, that is where you're trying to run away from. Okay, so that trigger comes, right? Again, a trigger could be anything. And then the urge rises up, you're feeling in your body, and then it gets to that peak where you feel like this is so intense, I need to say something, I need to defend myself, I need to lash out, whatever the issue may be. And if you just observe it, this is just an just the ocean, in the waves of the ocean, it will crash. This edge is gonna crash. And if you observe, it really doesn't take too long. The intensity or the duration of the time doesn't take too long. Just as you see the wave of the ocean, that wave doesn't stay up for too long. So for people who surf on the ocean, I wish actually that's something that is on my bucket list. I need to learn how to surf. But to the most part, the water has mostly been cold every time I try to dare myself to do it. But anyway, going back to ice surfing, is just as you see the wave of the ocean, it crashes so fast, that urge inside of you, it will crash. The thing about it is for you to hold it without acting upon it. So one of the things that you can practice is, number one, acknowledge that you're having the urge. Let's say you're being triggered, you're talking to someone, or you go to a place that triggers you and you feel that build up rising inside of you. Just acknowledge, I'm having an urge, so that you validate it without having to get rid of it with the intention that you don't want to feel that way. And start to notice what you're thinking and feeling without trying to change it or suppress it. So all of us feel discomfort. Every discomfort, we don't have to act on it. We can observe the discomfort and let it pass, and remind yourself, like, you know what, it's okay to have urges. They are natural reactions to habits that we experience or addictions that we may have, and urge is not, it's a feeling, it's not a must, so it will pass. And sometimes it's okay to acknowledge that discomfort is part of being human, so that you don't always run from it. And I think this is where most addictive behavior really kick in, because a lot of times we are trying to run away from that discomfort of the urge, but it's temporal. It doesn't stay too long. And so for many of you, maybe you're one of those people who have been struggling with your emotional dealing with distress, and you just find yourself, you blame yourself after the urge process, but you just screamed at someone, you just yelled at someone, you just cut somebody off, maybe even road rage. There are so many things that we do as a result of just trying to not feel the distress. And so as you do that, you remember, skills are things that we practice. They don't happen in a vacuum. we gradually cultivate those skills until we become skillful. And so if you're experiencing a lot of distressful moments, and sometimes you go through seasons in life where life is just stressing you out, be mindful that that is happening so that you can tune into you on the inside to maintain a healthy emotional well-being. It's very easy to be to give in to the urges and just do whatever you feel is the best that you can do. But I've also have seen people when they come out of it, that condemnation, the shame, the guilt that they have to live with as a result. So it becomes like a bad cycle. But again, the fact is, as human beings, it's very normal for all of us to experience moments of distress, but we have to learn how to deal with them and how to tolerate them. So this skill that they call urge surfing is one of the skills that you can practice. If you don't remember anything, just remember the waves crashing. And just as the waves crash, that emotion that you're experiencing that is stressing you out, it will pass on it. It will also pass so that you can hang in there and allow yourself to grow in that skill and that ability. And hopefully when you find yourself in territories that you don't necessarily like, you are able to sit with it, sit with your emotions. I think that's one of the things we run from. We don't like to sit in uncomfortable emotions, but trust me, when you learn to sit with your emotions, you grow a lot in your emotional well-being, even in your mental abilities, because they pass. They don't come to stay, they come to communicate messages, but if we can translate the messages and act upon it in a healthy way, we are good to go. So I hope this really encourages you, really helps you practice, practice, practice. And again, you can share it with your friends, subscribe to it, like it, and we'll come back tomorrow or another day with another skill. I hope these are equipping you well.